They say that somewhere deep inside every person lies a secret, a power so great that it could turn an ordinary life into a masterpiece of success and meaning. Most people go to their graves without ever discovering it. But one night, a restless man stood before a mysterious stranger who promised to reveal this hidden power. What happened next would change his life forever. Part 1. The hidden power within. Jacob Turner had spent years searching for something he couldn't quite name. He had read every book on success, listened to countless speeches, and even tried his hand at a few ventures that always seemed to end in quiet disappointment. His apartment was filled with the remains of dreams that had never come true, unfinished journals, unpaid bills, and the same old feeling that life had somehow passed him by. One cold November evening, Jacob found himself wandering through the narrow streets of the old part of town. The fog was thick, curling around street lamps and casting ghostly halos of light. As he walked, he noticed a small wooden sign swinging in the wind. The House of Hidden Truths. Curious, Jacob pushed open the door. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of old books and cedar. Behind a desk sat an elderly man with sharp eyes and a calm smile. He motioned for Jacob to sit. "I've been expecting you," the old man said. Jacob frowned. "Expecting me? I don't even know what this place is." The man opened a drawer and placed 2 sealed envelopes on the table. One was white, the other black. "In one of these," the man said softly, "is the blueprint for the life you were meant to live, filled with purpose, abundance, and joy. The other contains the penalties you'll pay if you continue drifting through life without direction." Jacob stared at the envelopes, his pulse quickening. "You're saying my future is in one of those?" The man nodded. "You already carry both within you. I'm only showing you what has always been there. The choice of which one you open depends on how you decide to think." Jacob laughed nervously. "That sounds like something out of a philosophy book." "It's far more than philosophy," the man said. "It's the oldest truth in the world, one that has been taught by every great teacher and rediscovered by every person who has ever achieved something meaningful. You possess absolute dominion over your own thoughts. That is the Creator's greatest gift to mankind." The words struck Jacob like a thunderclap. He sat silently as the man continued. "Every life, whether of triumph or failure, begins as a thought. The magnificent buildings that pierce the sky, the inventions that have changed our world, all began as ideas in someone's mind. The power that built cities and created fortunes is the same power that beats within your heart this very moment. But it can only serve you if you learn to direct it toward a definite purpose." Jacob's eyes drifted back to the 2 envelopes. "How do I know which one I'm opening?" "That," the old man said with a smile, "depends on what you decide to think about most of the time. Thoughts of fear, doubt, and limitation open the dark envelope. Thoughts of purpose, faith, and determination open the other. Life will not allow you to stand still. You will either rise toward your highest potential or sink into mediocrity. There is no middle ground." Jacob leaned forward, fascinated. "So what do I do?" "You must begin," the old man said, "by discovering your definite chief aim. Without it, your mind scatters its energy like sunlight through fog, warm but unfocused. But with it, that same energy becomes a beam powerful enough to pierce through stone." Jacob looked puzzled. "A definite chief aim? It is the master key," the man said. "The single, burning purpose that gives order and meaning to all your thoughts and actions. Without it you drift. With it you command the very forces of your destiny." Jacob nodded slowly, feeling something stir within him, a sense of clarity he hadn't felt in years. The old man continued, his voice low and steady. "Take time to ask yourself, if you knew you could not fail, what would you dare to achieve? That answer, when it comes from deep within your heart, will point you toward your true purpose. Write it down as if it has already been achieved. Speak it every day until your subconscious mind begins to accept it as reality." Jacob reached for his notebook, his hands trembling slightly as he wrote. "I am a man of purpose and achievement. I live each day with confidence and courage. My life inspires others to believe in their own power." When he finished, the old man nodded approvingly. "That is your first step. Your definite chief aim is the compass by which you navigate the storms of life. Everything you think, say, and do must now align with it. Ask yourself in every decision, does this move me closer to my purpose or further away?" Jacob felt an almost electric energy fill the room. It was as if the fog outside had lifted from his own mind. The old man smiled. Remember this. The moment you commit yourself to a definite purpose, you set in motion unseen forces that will guide, assist, and strengthen you. People will appear in your life who can help you. Opportunities will arise that once seemed impossible. The world rearranges itself to accommodate the person who knows exactly what he wants. Jacob rose from his chair, clutching his notebook. I think I understand now, he said quietly. The old man nodded. Then your journey has begun. The first envelope begins to open when you take control of your thoughts. Guard them well, for they are the architects of your reality. As Jacob stepped back into the misty street, he felt a strange warmth in his chest, a flicker of hope that hadn't been there before. The city lights glowed like distant stars, and for the first time in his life, he sensed that he was no longer drifting. He had taken the first step toward the life described in the white envelope. He didn't know it yet, but his meeting with the old man marked the beginning of a transformation that would test every belief he held about himself and the world. The next chapter of his journey would teach him that no man ever achieves greatness alone. End of part 1. Would you like me to continue with part 2, The Power of the Mastermind Alliance? In the same storytelling tone and style? Title: The Secret of the Two Envelopes. Part 2, The Power of the Mastermind. Jacob thought his life had changed the night he met the old man and learned about the two envelopes. But he soon discovered that having a purpose was only the beginning. Dreams could inspire him, but to turn them into reality, he would need something even greater. He would need the power of a mastermind, a circle of people whose combined energy could lift him beyond anything he could do alone. Part 2, The Power of the Mastermind. Weeks passed since that foggy night when Jacob first wrote his definite chief aim. Every morning, he would repeat the words the old man had told him. What I think I become. He felt more focused than ever before. Yet, deep down, he sensed something missing. He had purpose, yes, but progress felt slow. The path ahead still seemed uncertain. One evening, while walking home from work, Jacob noticed a dimly lit cafe tucked between two tall buildings. Its sign read, The Thinker's Table. Something about it called to him. Inside, laughter and conversation filled the air. Around one large table sat a small group of men and women, each speaking with energy and conviction. Their faces glowed with enthusiasm. As Jacob quietly found a seat near the back, he realized they weren't just socializing. They were planning, creating, building. A woman with kind eyes turned toward him. You're new here, she said warmly. Welcome. We're a group of entrepreneurs, artists, and dreamers. We meet here every week to help one another grow. Jacob introduced himself, explaining how he was trying to bring direction to his life. The group's leader, a gray-haired man named Mr. Harris, nodded approvingly. Then you're in the right place. We call this our mastermind. Jacob's eyebrows lifted. Mastermind? Mr. Harris smiled. When two or more minds work together in harmony toward a shared goal, they create a third, invisible mind, a greater intelligence that guides them all. Napoleon Hill once called it the most powerful force in human success. He leaned forward. No one rises alone, Jacob. Every great achievement in history was the product of minds united in purpose. A single idea may start in one head, but it grows and strengthens when shared with others who believe. Jacob listened, fascinated, as members began sharing their challenges and progress. One woman spoke of her bakery struggling to attract customers. Instantly, others offered creative solutions, marketing ideas, social media strategies, and even referrals. Another man described his invention, and within minutes, the group brainstormed ways to find investors. Jacob realized something incredible. The combined energy of the group made everyone more creative, more confident, more capable. It was as if each person added a spark to a fire that grew brighter with every exchange. When his turn came, Jacob hesitated. I've started to define what I want from life, he said slowly. But I feel like I'm moving alone. Mr. Harris smiled. That's the problem most people face. They try to build a castle with only their two hands. But when you join minds with others who share your passion, you multiply your power. Tell us your aim. Jacob took a deep breath and repeated his written purpose: to live with confidence, to inspire others, and to create a business that brings value to people. The group nodded thoughtfully. Then ideas began to pour in. how to start a blog, how to find a mentor, how to connect with like-minded creators. Jacob scribbled notes furiously. It felt as though a door had opened in his mind. For hours, they exchanged thoughts and strategies. By the time the cafe closed, Jacob realized he hadn't just found advice, he had found allies. That night, walking home beneath the streetlights, he remembered the old man's words. The moment you commit yourself to a definite purpose, unseen forces begin to move. Now he understood. Those forces often arrived in the form of people. Over the following weeks, Jacob became a regular at the Thinker's Table. Each meeting brought new insights, new challenges, and new encouragement. He learned that the mastermind wasn't just about exchanging ideas. It was about shared energy and accountability. When he felt discouraged, others lifted him up. When he doubted himself, they reminded him of his vision. Together, they celebrated victories and learned from failures. Slowly, Jacob's confidence grew into something solid and unshakable. One evening, Mr. Harris pulled Jacob aside. "You're learning fast," he said. "But remember, the mastermind works only when you bring your full value to the group. You must give as much as you receive." Jacob nodded. "I've been trying to share what I know about writing and marketing. It's not much, but it's enough," Mr. Harris said. "The power of a mastermind grows when each person gives their best. Your enthusiasm, your ideas, your honesty, all of it fuels the group. What you put in, you get back tenfold." Those words sank deep. From then on, Jacob became one of the most active members of the alliance. He volunteered to help others, stayed late to brainstorm solutions, and even helped organize the meetings. He noticed something remarkable. Every time he contributed, new opportunities appeared in his own life. A designer in the group introduced him to a potential client. Another member helped him set up his website. Before long, Jacob's small coaching business began to grow. He was earning more, but even better, he was finally living with purpose. One night, as the group shared a toast to another successful week, Jacob realized that the mastermind was more than a gathering of people. It was a living, breathing force. Together, they generated momentum that carried everyone forward. Ideas that once seemed impossible now became achievable. Projects that once felt overwhelming now felt exciting. Each member's success fed the energy of the others, and together, they reached heights none could have reached alone. On his walk home, Jacob remembered the old man's lesson about the two envelopes. The first contained a life of purpose and abundance. He smiled, knowing he had chosen correctly. The mastermind had become the key that unlocked the power he had always carried within. And though the journey was far from over, Jacob felt something he had never known before: faith, not blind hope, but a living belief that his dreams were within reach. Because now, he was no longer walking alone. End of part 2. Would you like me to continue with part 3, The Power of Faith, next in the same style, simple language, story-driven, and 1,000 words for American audiences? Title: The Secret of the Two Envelopes. Part 3, The Power of Faith and Imagination. Jacob had discovered his purpose and joined a circle of powerful minds that lifted him higher than he could ever climb alone. But soon, he faced a test that would shake his confidence and challenge everything he had learned. It was then that he realized, dreams don't survive on effort alone. They live and breathe through faith and imagination, the invisible forces that turn thoughts into reality. Part 3, The Power of Faith and Imagination. A cold rain was falling the night Jacob stared at the letter in his trembling hands. The client who had promised him his biggest opportunity yet had backed out. The project he had worked on for months was gone. The steady income he had begun to build vanished overnight. For hours, Jacob sat in silence, his mind filled with doubts. Maybe he had been foolish to believe he could change his life. Maybe all those principles, all that talk of purpose and alliance, were nothing more than pretty words. That's when he heard the old man's voice echo in his memory. "Life will test your resolve to see how deeply your belief runs." He sighed, pushing the letter aside. The next meeting of the Thinker's Table was the following night, and part of him didn't want to go. But something within urged him to keep moving, even if he didn't know how. The cafe was warm and buzzing with energy when he arrived. Mr. Harris noticed the look on his face immediately. "You've had a setback," he said quietly. Jacob nodded. "A big one. I lost my best client. I feel like everything's slipping away." The older man smiled knowingly. Then it's time for the next lesson, the principle of applied faith. Jacob frowned. Faith? You mean belief? Not just belief, said Harris. Applied faith. It's what you do when the lights go out, when you can't see the next step, but you keep walking anyway. It's what turns an idea into reality. He leaned closer. Faith is not sitting back and hoping something will happen. It's acting with conviction even when you can't yet see the results. When you plant a seed, you don't question whether it will grow, you water it, you care for it, you trust the process. The words sank deep. For the first time that week, Jacob felt a flicker of strength return. Faith, Harris continued, must be trained like a muscle. You feed it daily with thoughts of confidence and possibility. The moment you allow fear to dominate your mind, faith begins to fade. But when you hold faith, obstacles become stepping stones. You'll find that even your failures carry the seeds of greater success. Jacob sat silently, his doubts slowly transforming into determination. So how do I strengthen it? He asked. Through autosuggestion, Harris said. You speak faith into your mind until it becomes your natural state. Every morning and every night, declare your confidence in your purpose. Tell yourself that success is inevitable, not because you hope for it, but because you are working for it. Jacob went home that night and stood before his mirror. He repeated over and over, I am guided by faith. Every setback moves me closer to success. I am calm, confident, and capable. At first, it felt strange, almost forced. But with each repetition, his voice grew stronger. Day by day, he noticed changes, not in the world around him, but within himself. His anxiety lessened. Ideas began to flow again. A week later, during one of his morning walks, Jacob stopped at a bookstore he had never noticed before. A sign in the window read, Business Workshop, helping local entrepreneurs grow. Something inside whispered, Go in. He followed that intuition and spent the entire day learning new marketing techniques and meeting other small business owners. By the end of the event, he had gained not one but 2 new clients. Faith, he realized, had guided him exactly where he needed to be. As his confidence grew, so did his imagination. The old man's words returned to him. Every great achievement begins as a thought. Jacob began to understand that faith and imagination were partners. Faith gave him the courage to dream, and imagination showed him what those dreams could become. One evening, as he sat at his desk, he asked himself, what would my life look like if I truly succeeded? What if money, time, and fear were no obstacles? He closed his eyes and let his imagination take over. He saw himself speaking to audiences, helping others discover their own purpose, creating books and courses that inspired millions. He could almost feel the warmth of the lights, the excitement of the crowd, the deep satisfaction of living fully aligned with his mission. When he opened his eyes, his heart raced. For the first time, he saw his future as something real, something possible. He remembered Mr. Harris once explaining the 2 kinds of imagination, synthetic and creative. Synthetic imagination, he said, takes what already exists and rearranges it. It's how inventors improve machines or entrepreneurs build better systems. But creative imagination, that's the spark that connects the human mind to infinite intelligence. It's the divine whisper that gives birth to truly original ideas. Jacob began setting aside quiet time each morning for imagination. He would write his definite chief aim at the top of a blank page, then let his mind explore freely. He didn't worry about practicality. He asked questions like, what if this problem didn't exist? What if I approached this from a completely different angle? What resources am I not yet seeing? The more he practiced, the more ideas came. Some small, some extraordinary. His imagination became sharper and more reliable, like a muscle that had finally been awakened. One morning, as he scribbled notes, a new idea struck him, a program to help struggling entrepreneurs discover their life purpose and build businesses around it. He could blend what he had learned from the old man, from the mastermind, and from his own journey. He felt a jolt of excitement. This was more than a business idea. It was his calling. For the next several weeks, Jacob poured his energy into developing the program. Every obstacle that appeared seemed to melt away under his faith-driven focus. The group at the Thinkers Table offered insights, connections, and encouragement. Soon, his project began to take shape. One night, After presenting his plan to the group, Mr. Harris placed a hand on Jacob's shoulder. "You see now?" he said. "Faith builds the bridge between your dream and its reality. Imagination designs the path you walk across. Together, they make you unstoppable." Jacob smiled, a deep sense of gratitude welling in his chest. "I understand now. It's not about hoping for a better life. It's about creating it, one thought, one step, one act of faith at a time." He looked around at his friends, his mastermind, and realized something powerful. The fog that had once clouded his vision was gone. The old man's lesson about the two envelopes had become crystal clear. He had chosen the white envelope, not by accident, but by belief. And as long as he continued to nurture faith and imagination, life itself would continue to open it, revealing treasures beyond his wildest dreams. End of part 3. Would you like me to continue with part 4, Specialized Knowledge and the Science of Growth, in the same inspiring story format and 1,000 word length next? Title: The Secret of the Two Envelopes. Part 4. The Workshop of the Mind. Jacob had learned that faith could move mountains, but now he faced one he couldn't see. His business had grown, but so had his uncertainty. Every new idea seemed to vanish before it became real. Then, one stormy night, his mentor told him something that changed everything. "The future," said Mr. Harris, "is first built in the workshop of your imagination." Part 4. The Workshop of the Mind. The rain outside was relentless, tapping against the windows of the cafe where the thinkers' table gathered. The warm light reflected off the brass teapots and the faces of those who had come seeking knowledge, hope, and the next step toward success. Jacob sat quietly, a notebook open before him, his pen unmoving. For weeks he had been wrestling with a question that haunted his thoughts. Why do some people with great ideas rise to greatness, while others fade into the background? Mr. Harris poured himself a cup of tea and looked at Jacob with that calm, knowing expression. "You've been thinking too much," he said with a smile. Jacob gave a half-hearted laugh. "Isn't that the point? To think?" "To think, yes," Harris said. "But not just to think. To imagine." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Imagination is the workshop of the mind. It's where every success story begins. Without imagination, even the best knowledge lies useless." Jacob frowned. "But I've tried. I've written goals, made plans, and followed every principle. Yet something still feels missing." "Then you've been using only half your imagination," said Harris. "There are two kinds, synthetic and creative. One rearranges what already exists, the other creates what never was." Jacob listened closely as Harris explained. "Synthetic imagination is what you use when you improve a business plan, build on an old idea, or fix a problem with a familiar solution. It's practical and powerful, but limited. Creative imagination, however, connects you to something far greater. It draws from infinite intelligence, the source of every new idea that ever changed the world." Jacob's curiosity sparked. "You mean inspiration?" "Exactly," Harris said. "Creative imagination is the bridge between your mind and that higher power. It's where new possibilities are born." Jacob leaned back, absorbing the words. The idea seemed almost mystical, but something deep inside told him it was true. He remembered moments in his life when ideas had struck like lightning, moments when inspiration seemed to come from nowhere. "So how do I use it?" he asked. Harris smiled. "You don't use imagination, you invite it. You prepare your mind like a garden and let the ideas grow. You feed it with purpose, belief, and emotion. The stronger your desire, the clearer your vision becomes." He pointed to Jacob's notebook. "Write your definite chief aim again. Then close your eyes and see it, really see it. Feel what it would be like to live that reality. The clearer the picture, the faster your imagination will show you the path to make it real." That night, Jacob went home and tried what Harris had said. He sat at his desk, wrote down his goal, and closed his eyes. At first, all he saw was darkness. But slowly, images began to form. The sound of an audience clapping, the feeling of success, the joy of helping others discover their potential. His heart beat faster. For a moment, he felt like he was living that future. The next morning, he woke up with a surge of energy he hadn't felt in months. New ideas poured into his mind, ways to improve his business, expand his message, and connect with others who shared his purpose. He realized that imagination wasn't just about creating fantasy, it was about designing reality. Weeks passed, and Jacob's work began to take on new life. His ideas grew more original, his decisions bolder. He started a new project based on a vision that had come to him during one of his imagination sessions, a program that would teach people how to combine purpose, faith, and creativity to achieve success. At the next meeting, he shared his progress with the group. "I've never felt this inspired before," he said. "It's like I'm not just thinking anymore, I'm seeing." Mr. Harris nodded. "That's the power of imagination. It's not a luxury, it's the foundation of every great achievement. But remember, imagination must be exercised daily. Like a muscle, it grows stronger with use." He handed Jacob a small card with a quote written on it: "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." Jacob smiled. "That sounds familiar." "It should," Harris said. "Napoleon Hill wrote it 100 years ago, and it's still true today. The imagination conceives, faith believes, and action achieves. That is the eternal formula for success." Jacob carried that card everywhere. Whenever he faced doubt, he pulled it out and read it until his confidence returned. One afternoon, while walking through the city, Jacob stopped at a construction site. He watched as workers studied blueprints, poured foundations, and carefully placed beams. Then it struck him: the entire building existed first in someone's imagination. Without that mental picture, there would be no design, no plan, no structure. "Everything begins in the mind," he whispered to himself. "Everything." From that day forward, he treated his imagination like a sacred workshop. He set aside quiet time each morning to visualize his goals. He asked himself new kinds of questions. What if this obstacle didn't exist? How else could I achieve this? What would happen if I tried something completely different? The answers that came were often surprising and powerful. He found creative solutions that saved time, opened opportunities, and inspired those around him. Soon, others began asking how he was achieving so much progress so quickly. Jacob smiled and told them, "It starts with what you allow yourself to imagine." As the months passed, Jacob's life transformed. His business flourished, his reputation grew, and his sense of purpose deepened. But more importantly, he learned to trust his inner vision. One evening, as he closed his journal after another successful day, he felt a deep gratitude. "Imagination truly is the workshop of the mind," he said softly. "It's where the invisible becomes visible, and dreams become plans." The storm that had once surrounded his life had passed. In its place stood the calm certainty that he was now the architect of his destiny, and though he knew there were still more lessons to come, Jacob felt ready. He understood now that every limitation began in thought, and every victory did too. The mind, he realized, was not a mirror reflecting reality. It was a workshop shaping it. End of part 4. Would you like me to continue with part 5? The power of organized planning, next in the same motivational Napoleon Hill story format, and 1,000 words. Title: The Secret of the Two Envelopes. Part 5. The Blueprint of Success. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of Jacob's office as he stared at the stack of papers before him. His imagination was alive with powerful ideas, but now came the harder question: how to make them real? His mentor's words echoed in his mind. "A dream without a plan is like a ship without a compass. It will drift wherever the wind blows." Part 5. The Blueprint of Success. After months of growth, Jacob had mastered faith and imagination. He could see his goals clearly, but seeing them and achieving them were not the same. He had learned that ideas, no matter how powerful, remained trapped in the mind unless organized into action. That evening, he met Mr. Harris again at the old cafe where their journey had begun. The place buzzed with soft chatter, and the smell of roasted coffee beans filled the air. Harris looked at Jacob and smiled. "You've come far, my boy," he said. "Your faith is strong, and your imagination is alive. But now, it's time to give those ideas structure. The next step in your transformation is organized planning." Jacob leaned forward eagerly. "I've been setting goals, making lists, even writing schedules," he said. "But something always slips through. What am I missing?" "Most people mistake lists for plans," Harris said, stirring his tea. "A plan is not a wish written on paper, it's a bridge between thought and action. It's the architecture of achievement. He paused, letting the words sink in. Think of your mind as an architect's studio. Your imagination draws the design, but planning turns it into a blueprint. Without that blueprint, construction never begins, or worse, it collapses halfway. Jacob nodded. So how do I build a real plan? Harris smiled knowingly. With purpose, persistence, and people. He began explaining that every great success story follows a sequence: desire, faith, imagination, and then organized planning. Planning, he said, is where the invisible becomes visible through action. He pulled out a small notebook and sketched a simple outline. First, he said, define your main goal with absolute clarity. What do you truly want? Second, break it into smaller, measurable objectives. Third, assign deadlines. Fourth, gather the right people, your mastermind alliance, to help you. Fifth, take immediate action, even if the plan isn't perfect. Jacob listened carefully, scribbling notes. But what if the plan fails? He asked. Harris chuckled. Then you make another one. And another. No plan works perfectly the first time. Failure is just feedback. The only real failure is quitting. Jacob left that night feeling empowered. He spent the next few days refining his vision. He wrote his definite chief aim in bold letters: to create a learning institute that teaches people how to think, believe, and achieve. Then, he began breaking it down, first the building, then the courses, then the staff, then the marketing. Every piece had a purpose, but it wasn't easy. His first attempts fell apart. The budget didn't balance, the timeline stretched, and partners backed out. For a moment, doubt crept in. Maybe this was too big for him. He sat alone one night, staring at the mess of papers, when he remembered something Harris once said. When your plan fails, it's not the end, it's the beginning of wisdom. Every failure carries the seed of an improved plan. Jacob smiled faintly. He gathered the papers, restructured his timeline, and tried again. This time, he sought advice from experienced mentors, listened to feedback, and adjusted his strategy. Each correction brought him closer to success. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, the plan took shape. He assembled a small team, each person strong where he was weak. One was a financial expert, another a marketing specialist, another a teacher with years of experience. Together, they formed what Harris called a coordinated mind. Their meetings were filled with energy and vision. They debated, brainstormed, and refined their plans late into the night. Whenever confusion or disagreement arose, Jacob reminded them, "We're not just building an institute, we're building belief." One afternoon, Harris visited their office. He watched the team in action and smiled proudly. "This," he said, "is the true meaning of organized planning. You've combined imagination, faith, and teamwork into structure. You've turned thought into motion." Jacob asked, "How do I keep this momentum going?" Harris replied, "Through persistence. Plans are living things, they must grow, adapt, and evolve. Never expect your first plan to be your final one. Every great achievement stands on a mountain of revisions." He placed a hand on Jacob's shoulder. "Remember, even the greatest builders start with sketches. The first draft of your dream is not its destiny, it's its foundation." Jacob absorbed every word. He realized that planning wasn't about perfection, it was about progression. Each adjustment was a sign of movement, not weakness. In time, the dream that once existed only in Jacob's mind became a tangible reality. The building stood tall, the doors opened, and students began to arrive, each one seeking what Jacob had once sought himself: purpose, courage, and direction. At the grand opening ceremony, Jacob looked out at the crowd and felt a wave of emotion. His mentor stood beside him, smiling proudly. "You did it," Harris said quietly. Jacob shook his head. "We did it. You taught me that success isn't born from luck, it's built by design." Harris nodded. "Exactly. A well-organized plan, driven by faith and guided by imagination, always finds a way." As the applause filled the hall, Jacob realized that his greatest victory wasn't the building or the business, it was the growth within himself. He had learned the secret truth Napoleon Hill spoke of: success begins in thought but must be completed through organized, persistent action. Later that night, Jacob stood alone in his office, the city lights glowing outside his window. On his desk lay the notebook where it had all begun. He opened it and read his first line again: to create a learning institute that teaches people how to think, believe, and achieve. He smiled, closed the notebook, and whispered, "The plan worked." But deep inside, he knew this was just the beginning. There were bigger dreams ahead, and each would need its own plan, its own structure, its own blueprint of success. For the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of challenges. He understood now that every great idea, no matter how impossible it seems, becomes possible when organized with purpose, faith, and persistence. And with that, Jacob turned off the lights and walked out into the night, ready for whatever the next chapter of his journey would bring. End of part 5. Would you like me to continue with part 6, final part, The Door to Infinite Power, next in the same Napoleon Hill story style? 1,000 words, with an inspiring ending and a call to action for your YouTube audience? Title: The Secret of the Two Envelopes. Part 6, The Door to Infinite Power, final part. Hook. It was past midnight when Jacob stood alone in his office, the lights of the city twinkling through the glass like scattered stars. The institute he had imagined, planned, and built was now real. Yet as he stared out into the night, he realized something profound. He had mastered faith, imagination, and organized planning, but there was one final key he had not yet turned. Mr. Harris's words echoed softly in his memory. "There is a power greater than all the rest, Jacob. The one that unlocks every door." Part 6, The Door to Infinite Power, final part. A knock at the door interrupted Jacob's thoughts. He turned to see Mr. Harris, older now, but with the same calm fire in his eyes. "You didn't think I'd miss your moment of realization, did you?" the mentor said, smiling warmly. Jacob laughed. "You always appear when the lesson begins." Mr. Harris sat down across from him. "You've done well, my boy. You've built your dream from thought to reality. But before your journey ends, you must understand the final principle. Without it, all others lose their lasting power." Jacob leaned forward. "What is it?" Harris's expression grew serious. "The power of persistence." Jacob frowned slightly. "Persistence? I thought I already understood that. I've worked hard, I've failed, I've kept going." "Persistence," Harris said gently, "is more than endurance. It is the sustained application of faith, imagination, and organized planning in the face of defeat. It is the fire that keeps the engine of achievement burning when others quit." He paused, then continued, "Many start strong, but only the persistent finish. You've come far because you refuse to stop, but the journey is not over. True persistence becomes second nature. It's not something you do, it's something you are." Jacob nodded slowly. He remembered the endless nights of doubt, the plans that failed, and the goals that once felt unreachable. Each time, persistence had pulled him through. But Harris wasn't done. "Persistence," he said, "is fueled by one thing: purpose. Without a deep, burning reason, the strongest person will eventually fall. But with purpose, even the weakest will rise." Jacob thought of his students, their faces filled with hope and determination. They were his reason. Their growth gave meaning to his struggle. Harris leaned back, eyes distant. "Napoleon Hill once said that persistence is to the character of man what carbon is to steel. It is the tempering force that makes your spirit unbreakable." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out 2 envelopes, the same 2 he had once given Jacob years ago. Jacob smiled in recognition. "The secret of the 2 envelopes," he said softly. "Exactly," Harris replied. "Do you remember what they said?" Jacob nodded. "One held the penalty of neglect, poverty, failure, and regret. The other held the reward of discipline, riches, self-mastery, and peace of mind." "And which did you choose?" Harris asked. Jacob smiled. "I chose discipline." Harris nodded approvingly. "And you've earned your reward." But the envelopes never disappeared, Jacob. Every morning, life places them before you again. Each day, you must choose which one to open. The words hit Jacob deeply. Success, he realized, wasn't a destination, it was a daily decision. The next morning, Jacob arrived early at the institute. The halls echoed with quiet purpose as his students began their day. He watched them with pride, but also with humility. Each of them was beginning their own version of the same journey, learning that achievement is born from thought, shaped by imagination, strengthened by faith, and secured through persistence. Later that day, during his lecture, Jacob stood before a group of eager young minds. He spoke with the clarity and conviction of a man who had lived every principle he taught. "Every dream begins with a thought," he said. "But thoughts alone are powerless without action. Faith gives them life. Imagination gives them form. Planning gives them structure. And persistence turns them into reality." He paused, looking around the room. "But never forget this. The greatest power you possess is your ability to choose. Every day you decide which envelope you open. One brings excuses and regret. The other brings discipline and success." The students listened in silence, captivated by the truth in his words. "Remember," Jacob continued, "failure is not the end, it's simply a test. The world will always test your persistence before it rewards your effort. When it seems like nothing is working, that is when everything is working beneath the surface. Keep going. That's when the magic happens." When the class ended, one young man approached Jacob. His name was Daniel, and his eyes shone with uncertainty. "Sir," he said, "what if I don't have faith yet? What if I'm still afraid?" Jacob smiled gently. "Then begin with belief in one thing, the rest will grow. Courage doesn't mean you have no fear, it means you act in spite of it. Every step forward builds your faith, and every victory, no matter how small, strengthens your persistence." That night, Jacob walked through the empty halls of his institute. The lamps glowed softly, casting long shadows along the walls. He paused by the window and looked out at the city below. He thought of where it had all begun: the cafe, the long talks with Mr. Harris, the failures, the moments of doubt, the spark of imagination that became a movement. In that quiet moment, he felt a deep peace. He understood now that success was never about luck or genius. It was about alignment with the natural laws that governed achievement. He whispered softly, "Desire, faith, imagination, planning, and persistence, these are the true riches." The door opened behind him, and Mr. Harris stepped in one last time. His eyes glistened with quiet pride. "You've done it, Jacob," he said. "You've unlocked the final door. You've proven that the mind, when directed with purpose, becomes the most powerful force in existence." Jacob turned to him. "What happens now?" Harris smiled. "Now you teach others to find their own keys." As the two men stood there, the city lights reflecting in their eyes, it was clear that something greater than success had been achieved. A legacy had begun, a legacy built not on wealth, but on wisdom, faith, and the unshakable power of persistence. Jacob extended his hand. "Thank you for everything." Harris clasped it firmly. "Don't thank me," he said. "Thank the principles. They were always waiting for you to believe." When Mr. Harris left, Jacob stood alone for a while, watching the dawn begin to rise. He could feel the first light touching the edge of the horizon. He whispered to himself, "Every sunrise brings 2 envelopes. And every day, I choose the one marked discipline." And with that, he smiled, knowing that the power that had guided him would never fade. It would live on, through his students, through their dreams, and through the endless human spirit that refuses to give up. Because persistence, when joined with purpose and faith, is truly the door to infinite power. If this story inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Light bulb backhand index pointing right. Subscribe for more powerful, life-changing stories inspired by Napoleon Hill. Thumb up like this video if you believe success starts in the mind. Speech Alone. Comment below what lesson touched your heart the most. Repeat button. Share this story with a friend who needs motivation today. Together, let's build a community of dreamers, doers, and believers. Glowing Star.